Hi guys, good morning. Welcome to another episode of Clangin and Bangin with Mikey, 262, episode 262. And happy first Sunday of 2026. I hope that your 2026 is better than your 2023, your 2024, your 2025, and the years before that, right? I wanted to talk about today how important representation is, right? In culture. Um, I ran across this quote, Denzel and a bunch of the cast members from Fences were being asked a question, and it's how they asked about like, oh well, could Martin, like like why would you need a black director for a black movie? And like the lady asking the question thought it was color versus, thought it was a color thing, and Denzel poetically said, it's not a color thing, it's a culture thing. It's like we all know what it's like on on a Sunday morning, what it feels like and what and or what it smells like when a hot comb hits hits your scalp. You know. Obviously I've never done that, but I've had family members who've had their hair straightened out with a hot comb on a Saturday night, Sunday morning. You know, that shit is strong. It smells. You know, like, and he went off to explain that, and it's true. Representation matters, man. He went on to say that Martin Scorsese, made Goodfellas, and Scorsese made Schindler's List. He's like, it's not a color thing; it's a culture thing. You know, and it's true because culture is extremely important. Um, Culture is something that a lot of people don't realize that it's necessary until you no longer have access to it. Um, and growing up in Hawaii, that's the one thing we learned about culture. Um, I'm not Native Hawaiian, you know, but I do understand the culture. You know, I do understand X, Y, and Z, right? And so representation matters, man. So it's like having the right representation in all aspects, whether it's medicine, law, the judicial system, having education, having somebody you know who who looks like you, um, is a is an empowering thing. I didn't have my first black instructor till I was a senior in college. Yeah, yeah. I remember. I remember once when I was like, sophomore, junior in high school. It was Black History Month, right? And the teacher, uh, she was a white lady. She decided to do a presentation on Tupac. And mind you, she's a history teacher. And I went up to her after class and I told her, like, Miss, you could have picked anybody in history to do to do this presentation on. And I told her what makes it worse is that you're a history teacher. You at least have your masters, you know. Minimum requirement is, bachelors, and some teachers had their masters, right? I'm like, you study history for a living. Why would you shortchange us, in this aspect? Mm. And she couldn't answer the question. And, and for me, that's when I kind of just realized, it's like, bro, if I don't look up my own history, I'm never gonna know, you know. And that's when I started looking up shit. And the first thing I looked up is I googled what did black people invent, and it ranged from a whole different set of from medical, surgeries, medical equipment to like inventing a light bulb, you know, or I can't remember the guy's name, but he invented he invented he invented Jack Daniels. Actually, he taught Jack Daniels how to distill his whiskey and everything like that too. Um, and that and Jack Daniels took that process and stole that process from him because the individual. Matter of fact, let's look it up. The individual was an enslaved black man. So, so it's like it's definitely something like a lot of people don't. A lot of people don't. They don't want to recognize that, right? It's like me and my partners got a saying. It's like it's not innocent, it's honest. I mean, it's not honest, it's innocent. And like what we mean by that is some people just got swag, man. Some people just have confidence, and it's like that's why it's so such an interesting time frame because a lot of people don't understand that it's not a color thing; it's a culture thing. You know, um, and a lot of people don't know their own history. They don't know their what's happening. They don't have a grasp on reality. They think that they do, but they don't, and it shows up. One thing about me was I don't understand is and I hate for my podcast to become political, but I don't understand how a lot of Native Hawaiians voted for Trump and they think that Trump cares about the little guy. They think that Trump cares about X, Y, and Z, and he doesn't. It's like, bro. Again, it goes back to it's not a color thing; it's a culture thing. He doesn't understand your culture, doesn't want to understand your culture, but he's just literally conning his way, into people voting for him for X, Y, and Z reasons, right? And I think that's the most disheartening thing that he can do. To abandon your culture, you know, to whitewash yourself, which to me this doesn't make any sense. You know. So the brother who was an enslaved man who was a slave, his name is Nathan Green. He was the first documented African American distiller who perfected the charcoal melanin of the process that gave the Tennessee whiskey that distinctive flavor. And but on another note too, I think it's also important to realize that if you don't study your history, if you don't understand what's going on, you're gonna be doomed to repeat it. Again, I don't like for my podcast is to become political because that's not the joint the gist of this podcast. The whole point of my podcast is to spread positivity, spread light, and make sure that everybody's holding themselves accountable And but the last thing I'm gonna say about this is that the whole "Make America Great Again" thing, right? When was America ever great? You know, we either are depressing other countries, or we're depressing our own citizens back here. Back here at home. Um, the images that live rent free in my mind is Bloody Sunday, um, and ironically, watching that movie Selma, I remember like, yo, if I'm gonna do a podcast, I'm gonna make it known that okay, we're gonna do it every Sunday, or and we're gonna talk about different topics. And one of the things that Bloody Sunday exposed to the rest of the world was that the American public or the American government does not take care of its citizens. Um, you had black and brown people and white people getting hosed down, getting attacked by you know mil- military dogs. You had and these hoses were so strong that they could like rip the bark off of trees. So what do you think it's gonna do when it hits human skin? Yeah, and you had you had people, um, college kids getting arrested for sitting at countertops and waiting to get served. And another thing that just sits rent free in my head was my father, and because he grew up in segregation, born in Baltimore, Maryland, and it's like people want to like be like, oh, well, like that's the North, like no, 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 it's not. It is the southernest northern state. Is like Virginia and the rest of them southern states. They're not that far from Baltimore, Maryland. You know, I think from New York City to Baltimore is like 200 miles, which is like a 3 hour drive. Anyway, um, my father told me, he's like, man, he's like, the first time I was able to sit down in a restaurant and get served was 1964, man. He was like, before that, we couldn't sit in restaurants. We had to go through the back door and get our food, man. And it's like, and I remember asking him. This is around the same time the teacher did that bullshit presentation on Tupac for Black History Month. And my father, he was a very articulate man. And so I asked him one time at the dinner table, because he would always ask us, hey, what you guys learning today? And I was like, oh, well, like, teacher did some bullshit presentation on Tupac for Black History Month. I wasn't really feeling that. I got a couple questions. Pops was like, yeah, what's up? And I was like, yo, so how did you feel when Martin Luther King Jr. got assassinated? And everybody at the table was like, my mother, my brother, my dad. My dad looked at me. He was like, okay, where you going with this? And I just want to know. He was like, yeah. He's like, okay. And so he told me. And he's like, man, he's like, I've never felt more angry in my life than anything else, because it's like they killed the leader for no reason, you know? And it's always so frustrating, because it's like a lot of people don't understand. Like, a lot of people think that the civil rights movement was just for black folks. It's like, no, it was for minorities and gender overall. It was for Asian, Latino, black, Hispanic, women's rights too. So it's like there was a lot of shit that was in that civil rights bill that didn't just benefit black people. It benefited minorities overall. You know what I mean? It's like, because a lot of people don't realize this too. It's like blacks at one point of time was considered three-fifths human. So yeah, even if a black could vote, during that time frame, like even if a black was free, a free black, a free black man, a free black person during slavery, they couldn't vote because their vote wasn't considered a full human vote. So, and it's like, and I think about that from time to time, and I kind of just like, you know, and it just made me wonder because it's like I often think to myself like, damn, I wonder how many other people who don't even know their own history are just walking around just all hunky dory, you know, and I I grew up in a place, I still live in a place where culture is a big thing, but a lot of it has to do with the fact that a lot of local people don't even know their own culture. You know, um, I know a lot of Native Hawaiians who don't even speak their own language. Like when I say speak it, they don't understand it. They don't study it. They don't do X, Y, and Z. And and it's sad. It's pathetic because they'll be the very ones like, oh yeah, fuck the military, fuck tourism, and it's like, bro, it's like without that, your ass wouldn't have a job. You know, because it's not like you have any skills, bro. It's like you don't have a college degree. You don't have a trade skill. You know, you don't have X, Y, and Z. So it's like, how can you say all this shit when you literally depend on the same thing that you despise? Make it make sense. You know, and that's where I'm at because it's like the older I get, the more I realize it's like, bro, like a lot of people are just fucking stupid. You know, a lot of people don't take the time to understand their history, their surroundings, the people that they associate with. That's why a lot of the times I'm by myself. You know, I don't really rock with people that much. I don't really fuck with people that much because it's like, oh, it's like I don't need to be around you like that. I don't want to be around you like that because it's like I already know for a fact that your ass ain't shit. Yeah. Or what's crazy to me is like and this is me switching gears. Is I posted something on Threads and and I said and I didn't know I didn't know this till like maybe last week or the week before where you could actually have like a dedicated topic to it, right? So I typed it in and like it's a topic was single mom, and I typed it in and was like, yo, like nobody talks about you know the woman who marries it, who has multiple kids by a deadbeat dad who marries him, and is equally just as bad as the woman who has two or three kids by two or three different different dudes. You know, because both show a lack of discernment when it comes to choosing adequate partners, right? And it's true. I hate to say it, but it's true. After a certain point in time, you can't sit there and say that this guy's an asshole. You can't sit there and say that he's X, Y, and Z because you chose to lay down with this nigga. You chose to do X, Y, and Z. You can and and it's also sad too when women realize that they don't have any help. And I'm like, yo, and like it's it's difficult to, it's difficult to say like, hey, I tried to warn you, you don't want to listen to me. Now look at you. And it's factual because it's like after a certain point in time, you're like, okay, but you can't complain about it because you knew what the red flags were. You know, you like you knew what was going to happen potentially, and you still went off and you did it. It's like when women come to me and they complain about stuff, and I'm like, yo, but it's like, but you can't. It's like you knew what the pitfalls was with this guy, or or vice versa, right? And I'm like, but you knew that, and you still went through with it, and you still ignored the red flags, and it's like you can't sit there and like be like, oh yeah, X, Y, and Z, yada yada yada. Like no, it doesn't work that way, man. It's like you can't like you like you can't sit there and play victim in a situation when you ignore the red flags. You know, it's like, and that's what I tell people. It's like, oh, it's like, just be careful because, you don't want to end up in a situation where you end up getting pregnant by a guy who just doesn't have it together, you know? Or who doesn't know how to handle this business as a man, who doesn't know how to handle X, Y, and Z, because it's like, yeah, I get it. Life is expensive. Life is extremely expensive, especially when you have a kid to bring into the world, right? But you should know that prior to you laying down with a particular woman and doing the deed. And I think that's where a lot of people get it fucked up at, is because, oh well, X, yeah, yeah, yeah. Like no, you can't. You know, you know. I don't care if you have one kid or you have 12. And believe me, I know people who have 12 kids, which is fucking insanity to me. Which is fucking insanity. And or I know people who have, multiple kids with multiple baby daddies, and they be saying X, Y, and Z, and I'm like, yo, like, it's like, I don't know what to tell you, mom, but it's like practicing discernment is a big thing, and you need to practice that, because obviously you keep making the same mistakes, you know, and I think a lot of the time people who do get married to the wrong individuals is like they want to sit there and play victim, but it's like, yo, but you can't, because you thought by having a baby would make this person or make him or her a better individual. It doesn't. All it does is expose the cracks that are already there. It makes them bigger. It magnifies them. And so when you don't have healthy boundaries on, and when you don't have a wherewithal of how to do certain things, or you don't sit there and take other people's advice, and what I mean by that is like I've been single longer than I've been in relationships, right? I can count on one hand how many fucking relationships I've been in, excluding one night stands. You know, and I tell people all the time, it's like, yo, it's like when you're venting to your friends, when you're venting to me, listen to what you're telling people. You know, listen to what you're actually telling people. Like, it's like, and I know I've mentioned this before. There was this one girl that I knew. She was dead set of having kids with, and she wanted kids, and the guy she married didn't want kids, and it's like, and like I remember one day we was in the gym because we used to all work out together, and then she'd be like, "Hey, Mikey, can you go talk to my husband?" I'm like, "For what? With what? Like, what the fuck do you want me to talk to him about?" And she's like, "Oh, well, can you go talk to him?" And I asked him why he doesn't want to have any kids. I'm like, "Nope." And she's like, "What?" I was like, "Nope, I'm not doing that." And she's like, "Why?" Because I told her, like, number one, he doesn't need somebody else in his business like that. And number two, that's not a conversation for me to have. And it's like, if you think that, that's the appropriate move, then then no, it's not. And ironically, like 2 weeks later, me and him are talking, and he brings that up, and he's like, yeah, man, she keeps talking about having kids, this and this and that. I'm like, dog, if you don't want kids, that's fine, but you got to let her go. That's because you don't want that to turn into resentment, because if she wants kids, then let her have her kids, bro. You know, like, it's not fair that that she waits on you to get it together when you're constantly telling her that you don't want kids. And don't get me wrong, like, Shorty was beautiful, you know, but it's like, for whatever reason, he did not want to have any kids, and I'm like, yo, that's fine, but I was like, you need to let that go, and you need to let her find that individual who wants to build a family with her, who wants to have kids with her, because it's not fair for her to waste years, and I've seen people waste decades, waiting on somebody to get it together, or even worse, they find dudes who just want to impregnate them, and it's, from what I was told, use their body as a vessel to bear their offspring. And like, that's the worst thing you can do, is that. Nobody ever talks about that, but nobody ever talks about the shit that women go through when they pick the wrong type of dude. And I'm like, yeah, it's like you can't sit there and like keep making mistake after mistake after mistake. It's like, you know, like it's one thing to get pregnant. Oh shit, off of one night stand. It's another thing to double down with somebody that you know is not mentally, that not mentally on the same level. Who's not emotionally available. Who doesn't know how to handle conflict. Who doesn't know how to handle X, Y, and Z. Because all that does is create more tension and more animosity. In a relationship. It's like I spend what 9, 10, 12 hours a day dealing with people. Why would I want to come home and deal with the same type of tension and chaos in my own house? Like, and don't get me wrong, I love kids. On the last podcast, you know, I talked about, hey, one day I want to get married and one day I want to have kids. At 37, yeah, like, could I see myself saying this shit at 22, 25, 27? No. But at 37, I'm like, yeah, I'm ready, you know? And I gotta go find somebody who wants the same thing I want, you know? And I think that's the most gratifying thing with like when you know you're ready and when you know you wanna, you know, help bringing somebody else into this world that, that looks like you, that has the same mannerisms, like that you can mold into a better human being. And it's like, while it scares the shit out of me, because I'll be fully responsible for another human being's life. It's also a rewarding thing too, man. It's like I can't wait to have a little boy or a little girl or little boys or girls running in the hall and calling me dad. The tiny feet pitter pattering, right? So yeah, it's like with that being said, man, it's like yeah, I think having kids is a beautiful thing. But you got to make sure that you have kids with the right individual, because when you have kids with the wrong individuals, you end up in situations where you end up being jaded, you end up being hurt, and it's like, and going back to that thread that I posted, is like this one guy, commented and he said like, yeah, man, it's like those be the worst ones. It's like they want to complain, X, Y, and Z, but they can't. And then somebody I knew, laughed at the message. I'm like, yo, it's like, but it's true though. It's like most people who get married to the wrong type of individuals, they spend a lot of more times complaining, and they spend so much time trying to fix a situation, whereas like that situation did not need to be fixed. A situation needed to be left alone. And like, I don't care how pretty you are, I don't care how fat your ass is, I don't care how big your titties are. It's like if you have if you have a history of making mistake after mistake after mistake, then nobody's gonna take you seriously. Nobody's gonna want to deal with you because it's nobody else's business and it's nobody else's problem to come in and fix something that they didn't break. You know, nobody nobody told you to get married to some guy who's an asshole or some girl who's an asshole, but because it goes both ways. And nobody told you to do X, Y, and Z. It's like that was up to you. That's on you. And I think that's a lot. I think that's something that a lot of people don't want to recognize. They don't want to deal with, because self accountability is a difficult thing to do, but it's a beautiful thing too. It's like when you can finally take responsibility for all the shit that you've done, life becomes a lot more less hectic. Um, I wish a lot of people would understand that. And to tie this all back into from the beginning, it's not a color thing; it's a culture thing. And in order to understand why you do what you do, you have to understand your culture, and you have to understand your culture could be your family. Your culture can be your family, your friends, your job, your significant other, any type of relationship, right? That's a part of culture. And if you think sticking around with somebody and having a gang of kids is gonna make them or having a kid or kids is gonna make this individual a better individual, you're most likely mistaken. You know, it's not gonna work. You know, because like I said, having a baby just brings out the more drastic part of what's not working. It doesn't make it better. It just exposes it for what it is. And what it is a weak foundation with a pretty face. You know, that's all it is. All right, y'all. This is 30 minutes of your life that y'all won't get back. Hope y'all keeping the 4Ps, private player, positive pushing. I'll see y'all next week Sunday. I love y'all. And like I always say, know your worth because you're better than what you are. Happy New Year, y'all. Peace. Happy Sunday. Go Ravens.